Hello. Can everybody hear me? Do I need to put this lower? All right, good. Oh, that got really loud. I'm a very loud person. I could probably fill this whole room without the mic. So if I get too loud, just, make gestures in the back and tell me to calm down so I'm not yelling at you and blowing out your eardrums at the end of the day. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited about all the great work that you guys are doing. It's been a wonderful day, and you're all still awake and energized and ready to sit in traffic. Anyway, my name is Lindsi, as Tim said. I'm the Unemployment Insurance Deputy Division Director with the Oregon Employment Department, and today I'm going to be talking to you about our recession planning project, also dig into the plan a little bit and talk about our economic task force, for which I was a member of, and the project I was the project manager. Oh, look at that, it's working. Woo-hoo-hoo. So, why did we take this project on? As many of you know, and as Dan said, since the 1940s, a new national recession has begun on average about every 6 years, and we're currently in a 9-year period of expansion, which is, as we said, the closest, longest expansion we've had since 1945. And although we cannot yet predict with certainty when the next recession is going to happen, we do know that one is coming. You guys got that drilled in after a day of hearing that over and over again. So anyway, a few years ago, the question was raised by agency leadership: if we know a recession is coming, why don't we develop a proactive plan to adjust our operations to provide a better and more valued service to the public that we serve? And so this is the idea that kicked off the Planning for Oregon's Economic Cycle project. So the project had 4 goals: to develop a lessons learned report for the Great Recession, which included contributions from all sections of the agency from a wide variety of different job classifications; to identify new trackable indicators of changes to Oregon's economic cycle and identify a methodology for monitoring those new indicators; create an economic cycle plan and share the plan with project stakeholders and interested parties; and also create an economic task force for the agency, which is a different entity than the project team, and I'll go into that a little bit later. We wanted to ensure that the project had support in each area of the agency, so we chose to include agency division directors as our project sponsors. Also, because the agency works so closely and has such a good partnership with the Office of Workforce Investments, we identified their director as a sponsor for the project as well. When assembling the project team, we wanted to have representation from subject matter experts from a wide variety of agency areas who would be able to either contribute to the project by doing a bunch of work themselves or by running a work group within their business area. We also wanted a mix of staff and management so that we had those different viewpoints reflected. At the beginning, we sort of mulled over the idea of including all of our partners, our sister states, our sister states, sister agencies, just about everyone that we could think of, and we had this big, huge, unwieldy group of people. But in the end, we determined we really wanted a plan that was within our span of control. So we just chose to include internal agency staff. The exception to this was our workforce partner, as I mentioned, Office of Workforce Investments, was intentionally included since we work so closely together. Plus, we knew that if we wanted any of those viewpoints reflected from the external parties, we can bring them in just to consult on the project without having to have them a voting member of the team. So the first item that we took on was the Lessons Learned report for the Great Recession. Cheery topic. We used the lessons learned methodology to review and evaluate how each section and the agency as a whole responded to the Great Recession and its aftermath. The thought being that by documenting our experiences, the report would allow the agency to capitalize on our successes and learn from our mistakes when faced with the next recession. We also thought that this would give us a really good framework for what to include within the plan itself. So we talked to frontline and technical staff as well as managers, and we asked all the participants the same 3 open-ended questions. What went right? What were our challenges? And what lessons can we apply to the next economic downturn? Once we compiled all of the interviews, we found that 4 main themes had emerged, those being communication, staffing, training, and our steadfast commitment to service. The final report included the overall findings, of just a lovely summary of those topics that I just mentioned. It also includes all of the raw feedback from the interviews, which we thought was really important to include to maintain the integrity of the report. And we were really delighted to find that some sections started making immediate improvements based on the feedback of that report. So the second project goal was to identify trackable indicators of changes to Oregon's economic cycle. The project team identified through research of available data over 20 indicators that can be used to detect current changes within Oregon's economy. We selected new items in addition to those that we had historically tracked. The new indicators are monitored through a dashboard that was created within our business intelligence tool, or BI as we call it. The rectangular box there on the left displays the total job separations by type, which is one of the indicators that is tracked using the BI dashboard. The box on the right there displays data regarding why Oregonians are unemployed, which is one of the historical indicators that is tracked by our Workforce and Economic Research Division. The indicator reports are generated monthly and distributed to the agency executive team and also to the Economic Task Force for review and discussion. All in all, we determined there were 7 new indicators that we could monitor through the BI dashboard and 8 indicators that we kept on because the ones that were historically tracked by the Workforce and Economic Research Division. And then we also identified 8 new indicators that could not currently be tracked through BI just because of where the data source is right now. But we will move it into BI once we can grab all that data and put it in our data warehouse. And that will be extremely exciting. So finally, we arrive at the plan. Oregon's Economic Cycle Plan is a high-level guide that gives recommendations of actions that can be undertaken throughout the economic cycle. The plan is divided into multiple sections with a variety of focuses, and we designed it that way so that it's easy to find what you need and just pull out that applicable section. As we all know, recessions come in a variety of different flavors, and we wanted it to be high-level enough so that it would still be applicable regardless of the parameters of the next downturn. The information in the plan is data-driven. We use staff interviews, analysis of available hard data, and outreach to subject matter experts to develop each individual section. The plan is also a living document, as Susie mentioned. So it's reviewed and updated at least annually so it remains relevant over time. As the Employment Department makes changes to processes, procedures, policies, and/or structure, the plan is modified to reflect those relevant changes. I won't be going into every section of the plan. I know everyone's got to get on the road, but I would like to highlight 3 of my favorites. My most favorite section is the 5 things to think about. This section is an actionable checklist of key points and questions that should be considered prior to, at the onset of, and during the next economic downturn. The 5 things are funding, communication, processes, technology, and staffing. Within funding, we ask the reader to consider items such as how much money is needed and when do we need it. Under communication, we ask what information needs to be communicated, when, and to whom. In the processes portion, we ask questions such as, has each division discussed their plans with each other to ensure that we're taking care of our customers, that doesn't inadvertently just pass the buck to the other division? For technology, we ask questions such as, is our technology actually ready for the inevitable unemployment benefit claim extensions that will definitely be coming our way? In Oregon, that's no, but we're working on that too. Under staffing, we ask, are current job duties and classifications doing the right work? If we were bringing in new staff, do they have vacant workstations that are fully equipped with functioning equipment that is updated with our current software package, before they arrive and are supposed to start working? One example of how this document can be used is if we were considering extending hours for our local one-stops. We have lots of customers coming through the door. It makes sense to open up maybe on a Saturday to give us customers more service options. To make it a more successful venture than it has been in the past, we asked the reader to consider how we communicated with IT to ensure that there's help desk coverage to support our staff and technology during the extended hours so that we don't have staff submitting service tickets that will be worked until Monday. Have we checked with facilities to validate what the terms of our building lease are? Can we even get in on a Saturday? If we can, is there increased cost for after-hours lighting, HVAC, or water usage? If so, what are the costs? Have we communicated with other state agencies and our workforce partners that might be impacted by the work that we generate on a Saturday, so they're not shocked when they show up on Monday and have this huge pile of work sitting on their desktop that just magically appeared over the weekend? The second section I'll talk about, and I'll spend less time on, is the communications plan, which is another dear section that I love so much. The purpose of this section is to lay out how we will communicate both internally and externally regarding the downturn. It identifies who the developers, reviewers, and approvers of messaging are, and has a matrix of who we will deliver messages to, such as the media, the public, our partners, and what potential format the communication should take place, social media, press releases, and general email, and it also has talking points that will likely be important to those audiences. The last section that I'll highlight is the quick staffing guide. In this section, we explore types of staffing options, such as cross-training current staff or bringing on new staff. And for each of those options, we explore policy guidelines and other constraints, recruitment options and limitations, system access the individuals will need, and the training that they might also need once they're brought on board. What I really like about this section is we can use it right now. It has, if you have a vacancy in your area, all the information that you need to evaluate how to fill that vacancy and what that individual might need once they get on board is all in one place within the economic cycle plan. So as I mentioned, the plan is meant to be shared. So it's available to all Oregon Employment Department staff on our internal agency website. Having the plan readily available will help reduce some of the confusion and frustration that many experience during the Great Recession. The page also houses our task force meeting minutes, the charter, contact information for all of our members, and also the project documentation for anyone who wants to read all of it. Not only have we shared the plan with our own staff, we've also shared it with agency partners, other states, committees, and associations such as NASWA. There are several state workforce agencies right now who are actively undergoing a project similar to this one. As Susie mentioned, the Employment Security Department in this great state of Washington is one of those lucky states. So the last project goal was to assemble the economic task force. The purpose of the task force was basically to take over for the project team after the project was completed. They monitor the economic indicators and meet at least quarterly to discuss where Oregon's economic cycle is at, any trends that they're seeing, and any new potential economic indicators that emerge. They had a meeting last week, they were talking about the yield curve. They also provide updates to program areas, agency management, and the executive team. It will be the task force in combination with agency leadership that will determine if we need to activate any of the elements of the plan, and that team will also assist in the implementation of those initiatives. The task force is responsible for keeping the plan up to date. We're actually in the process of doing our annual update right now. And it will be the task force who will evaluate the effectiveness of the plan after the next economic downturn using the handy scorecard that is located in the back of the plan. In this way, the plan will only get better over time. The Employment Department's task force started meeting in 2018 and will continue to meet throughout 2019 and beyond. There's 15 task force members, including the Recession single point of contact, who the role of this individual is to sort of serve as the project manager for the next recession. During the project, we identified a need to have a single point of contact, someone whose job it is to ensure communication is smooth and that all partners and areas of the agency know what the other is doing, so the left hand and the right hand are sort of communicating throughout the chaos of the next downturn. During times of economic stability, she attends meetings and keeps up to date on what is going on throughout all of the agency. During the next downturn, however, she'll step away from her regular job and concentrate on task force activities and plan initiatives full time. So people always ask me, how long did all of this work take? The timeline for the project was originally slated for 17 months. However, it ended up ballooning to an actual duration of about 29 months. And there are many reasons for the extended timeline. With the true deadline of the project being the somewhat undefinable future date of the onset of the next economic downturn, and because the project team was able to monitor the economic indicators throughout the project lifecycle, so we knew Oregon was not headed into a recession just yet. Schedule slippages were always discussed, but ultimately they were allowed most of the time. Had the indicators shown that Oregon was heading into a recession, this project would have taken priority and members would have quickly switched their focus back so it could have been completed. So if you would like a copy of our plan, I think you already have one, but if anybody wants any of that, or the project documentation, or any other additional information, we're happy to share what we have. This is my contact information. Thanks so much for listening to me. I'll invite Dan back up here if anyone has any questions.
Describe the Main Street and Wall Street recessions and give a little bit of context to what that might look like for those folks that are trying to plan for this.
Sure. For those of you who couldn't hear, she asked if I could kind of differentiate between the Wall Street and the Main Street recession. The biggest thing about the Wall Street and the Main Street recession, I guess if I were to give you examples, I would look at the 2001 recession as a financial recession versus a Wall Street recession, and 1991 as a Main Street recession. I think really the impetus is that all recessions have some kind of Wall Street impact to them. The question is whether or not the impacts happen on Wall Street, whether or not they have enough, their roots go deep enough throughout the entire economic system where they can cause Main Street problems. So in 2008, for example, that was a Wall Street recession that became very much a Main Street recession because it affected people's mortgages, right? If we go in, the 2001 recession, however, was much different because it was very isolated to certain parts of the equity markets. And if you look at overall disposable personal income, for example, it never actually declined year over year. So a lot of financial losses, but it was very segregated in the financial sector and relatively high wealth individuals. Whereas the Main Street recession is going to hurt, everybody regardless of their income classification.
And so that would be a very important way to understand what is actually happening in the economy as we're trying to plan for state agency sort of impacts.
Yes, ma'am. That would be very important in order, especially to focus on which sectors are going to have the most impact, and also which programs are available to help those people as they start to go through an economic downturn. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk about the NAIRU and the yield curve inverts in the context of our last Great Recession?
Sure. So the question for those of you way in the back, can I put NAIRU and the yield curve in context with regard to the Great Recession? In terms of what happened with the Great Recession?
Yeah.
Sure. So I remember in 2006 going on a job interview and thought I knew everything because I talked to the guy for a half hour about the yield curve. But I did very well. I got offered the job because I could talk about the yield curve. It was my second job out of college or something. And I remember him telling me, don't worry about it. We've got, this time is a little different. And then I remember a year and a half later, we were in a Great Recession, right? Employment was the same way. I think it was about 2.5 years. We kind of bottomed out NAIRU in 2005-ish, I want to say, where we started to go through NAIRU. And then again from that, so if you assume that that's the equilibrium rate, over the long run, we're always going to come back or down to that equilibrium rate. So right, if we have a recession, it's going to go above it, and it's going to come back down to it. If we blow right past it, by definition, we are eventually going to come back up at least to it, right? And so what the Federal Reserve's job, for example, is to do with monetary policy, and what government's job is to do with fiscal policy, is to make sure that when we blow past full employment and we overheat as an economy, we only come back up to equilibrium, right? That's a very difficult job. Anybody know how many times we've done that as a central bank in the United States? 0, right? Which is not to say that they haven't done a good job. It's just, it's virtually impossible to do. Any other questions? We were that good that you don't have any other. Oh, yes, sir.
This is for Lindsi. You said you created, I believe, 8 economic indicators specific to the Oregon economy. If so, how did you come up with those?
So yes. And we first, we brought in a bunch of subject matter experts and we sort of talked about what indicators do we currently monitor, or what data do we have that would show what Oregon's indicating. I can't even talk, I keep choking on my own, so sorry about that. Anyway, so we brought in a bunch of subject matter experts and we just had a big brainstorming session, and we had, I think, a list of, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100 different things we could possibly monitor. And so then we sort of broke down and looked at what showed the Great Recession, what kind of showed, I think that we had information on like the 90s recession and the 2000s recession. That's about as far back as we could go. And then we looked at what are we currently tracking, what can we track, and then we just sort of winnowed it down, talking to different people. So that's kind of how we landed on those 7, 8, and 8.
Something specific to Oregon,
Yeah, they're not. We look at the national indicators as well, but just as far as the 8 indicators that I was talking about, it's what's happening in Oregon. So we have like Trade Act activity, and that's something that happens everywhere, but we're looking at what's happening with the Trade Act program in Oregon itself.
Yes.
A 3-pronged question. With the baby boomers retiring and the new generation having debt, student debt, and the Medicaid system being overloaded, how do you foresee these factors playing into the severity of the next wave?
Three-prong question, I'll give you a one-prong answer. I don't see that having much of an impact on the next recession. I see it having a major impact on all of the recessions thereafter. But in terms of a recession a year and a half from now, it's not a huge issue. There might be some small issues on the margins, like it might cause some baby boomers to retire faster and not re-enter the workforce. It may cause some folks in terms of student loans, especially, that's a question I get a lot. It may cause some of them to default. But again, that's not a systemic issue like we talked about with a Main Street recession, because there's about $1.3 trillion in student loan debt out there. About $1 trillion of that is backed by the federal government. And so that's a taxpayer problem. That's not a financial market risk problem. And then Medicaid. Medicaid is a major problem. It's been a major problem. It will continue to be a major problem. And it's one of the reasons why states are so handcuffed in terms of their ability to react to the recession. In my fair Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we spend about 50% of our state budget on mandatory spending items, right? So before the legislators get to Harrisburg and appropriate a single dollar, half of the state budget is already spoken for. 30% is Medicaid and 20% is pensions, right? And so we're fighting with an arm behind our back before we even get going. So it may prevent some states from having the ability to fight back in a recession like they would in the past. But for the most part, what we've seen, and you can look this up on our website, we actually go through and we stress test all 50 states every year. Washington does very well, actually. Pennsylvania does not very well, right? We have a $34 billion budget. We have a $26 million reserve fund. I didn't mess the B's and the M's up. That's really the numbers there. And so those states, Pennsylvania's going to have a real tough time fighting the next recession. Washington's going to be in much better shape. So I talked about kind of winning the recovery afterwards. Any other questions? We were really good. We told them all the information they needed, and they picked it up right away. They don't have to. Awesome.